My wedding was just 2 weeks away, and in a single, gut-wrenching moment, I realized I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. The woman I loved, my fiancée, was secretly involved in a betrayal so deep, it shattered my entire world. Sarah and I had been together for 6 incredible years, engaged for 1, and our wedding was practically here. We were supposed to be relaxing at home that night, a rare calm before the storm of wedding festivities. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming as she made dinner, while I was outside wrestling with one of my projects. You know how it is when you're doing heavy labor, you get thirsty. So I came back inside, ready for a cold drink, and that's when I heard it. Sarah was at the counter, chatting on speakerphone. And I instantly recognized the voice, my brother-in-law, Marty. What he said next, and Sarah's response, twisted my brain into a knot I couldn't untangle. Marty was asking Sarah about his wife, Evelyn, who also happens to be Sarah's sister. He'd been trying to reach her, texts unanswered. And Sarah, without missing a beat, told him, "Oh, she just left here. She should be home in about a half hour or so." I grabbed a glass, trying to process it, and asked Sarah, what was all that about? She shrugged. Marty was looking for Evie. I saw her tapping away on her phone. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Texting Evie," she replied, to tell her Marty was looking for her. I poured my drink, sat down, took a sip, and then, finally, my brain kicked into gear. First, Sarah told Marty that Evelyn was here. But Evelyn wasn't here. The last time we saw her was yesterday. Second, why was Sarah texting Evelyn and expecting a response, when Marty just said Evelyn wasn't answering texts? And third, the biggest red flag, why the hell would she tell Marty that Evelyn would be home in 30 minutes, unless she either knew exactly where Evelyn was, or she was right then, in front of me, texting her to get her but home, fast. The only conclusion, the only logical, terrifying conclusion, was that Sarah was lying to Marty about his wife's whereabouts. She was probably warning Evelyn that her husband would be expecting her home soon. For the next 5 agonizing hours, I lay there, my mind racing, concocting 1,000 explanations, some plausible, most horrifying. I desperately wanted to ask Sarah, to confront her, but if what I suspected was true, I knew I wouldn't get a straight answer. So I waited, the dread a heavy weight in my chest. Then, around 1 a.m., I woke up to use the bathroom. And I couldn't resist. I knew Sarah's phone PIN, we both knew each other's. So I quietly grabbed her phone, retreated to the bathroom, and unlocked it. And yep. It was exactly what I'd feared, what you're probably expecting. Sarah's sister, Evelyn, had been having a full-blown affair for about 6 months with a co-worker. And my fiancée, my beautiful, kind, fun Sarah, had been helping Evelyn cover it up for almost the entire time. There were hundreds of texts about the affair, about the co-worker, explicit details, even truly embarrassing things about my own brother-in-law. My stomach churned. Here was my soon-to-be wife, going along with all of it, without batting an eye. I took screenshots of everything, the entire damning thread, then carefully put the phone back. I escaped to my home office, needing to type it all out, anything to avoid the primal scream that clawed at my throat. I was utterly, irrevocably screwed. I couldn't marry Sarah. I just couldn't. How could she assist her sister in victimizing Marty and their 2-year-old daughter? On the other hand, everyone, my family, Sarah's family, us, had sunk a staggering amount of money into a wedding happening in 2 weeks. There was no getting that back. I felt like an absolute fool. How did I not see this? What the hell was I going to do? I couldn't marry her, but a part of me still wanted to. She was everything I thought I wanted, but now there was this massive, black stain on an otherwise beautiful picture. I just couldn't comprehend how I'd gotten it so wrong. The thought of doing what I knew I had to do made me want to vomit. I didn't need convincing, the wedding was off. But the pressure, the sheer weight of everyone's expectations, was suffocating. At 5 a.m., running on barely any sleep, I went to work early, needing to avoid Sarah and stew in my own misery. I started pulling off the Band-Aid. The first call was to my brother in Australia. It was hard, knowing how much he'd spent on flights, but to his credit, he didn't even mention the money. He just backed me up. He made a profound point: you deal with liars and scammers at work every day. I don't blame you for wanting your home to be a sanctuary from that. He was absolutely right. It explained why Sarah's deceit hit me so hard. He even had a brilliant idea. My family was going to Florida for sightseeing, and he suggested I join them, rebooking my honeymoon plans to be with them. That was the first small light in the darkness. By the way, if you're still with me through this absolute train wreck of a story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable tales are coming, I promise you that. I couldn't focus at work. My stomach was doing flip-flops from all the coffee. I knew I couldn't do anything until I told Marty, so I took a sick day. I drove to his house, hoping he was home. He's a teacher on break. Evelyn works 9 to 5. Odds were good. I got to Marty's a little after 10 a.m. He had just put his daughter down for a nap. What followed was a long, brutal conversation in his kitchen. He confessed he'd suspected Evelyn for months, but she was incredibly good at covering her tracks, obviously, with Sarah's help and some mutual friends. I didn't have all 6 months of texts, just the screenshots I'd taken from Sarah's phone, but I gave him everything I had. I offered to help him in any way I could. As a field analyst specializing in workers' compensation fraud, I know a few things and a few people. So, there I was, working from my laptop in my almost brother-in-law's kitchen, trying to salvage what I could. I had to talk to Sarah that evening and get the word out to my friends and family. Now that I'd helped Marty, I wouldn't be screwing him over. I managed to rebook most of the honeymoon, even with some hassle over Sarah's ticket. I held off canceling the venues until after I talked to Sarah, not wanting to tip anyone off before Marty confronted Evelyn. But my family and friends would know that afternoon, with strict instructions to keep it quiet. I was in a frenzy, canceling what I could, opening a new bank account, sorting out finances. Sarah had contributed to the down payment, and I'd have to pay her back, but it could be worse. That night, at my friend Mark's house, I got another call. Marty needed my help. All he had was a name for the other man, Jake. My job is basically private detective work for insurance fraud, so I was the guy for this. A quick LinkedIn search for Evelyn's connections yielded nothing, which was strange. Marty said Evelyn was supposedly out for drinks and wouldn't be home until 9 or 10. I immediately knew what he suspected. I agreed to help, but only if he came with me. We picked up Mark, dropped Marty's daughter at his parents', then headed to Evelyn's work. We found Evelyn's car in the large, non-gated car park. Marty unlocked it, and I gave him a voice-activated recorder and a GPS tracker to place inside. We waited down the street. About an hour later, Evelyn emerged from her office with 2 girlfriends and a tall, sandy blonde man. They were holding hands. I remember thinking, "Damn, Evelyn, you're making this easy." I snapped a couple of pictures, then we followed her. She didn't go to a hotel, but to a nice bar and grill. We parked and strategized. Mark went in first. No one knew him. His job, get photos and be my alibi. 20 minutes later, the texts from Mark started rolling in, pictures of Evelyn and Jake making out in front of their 2 female co-workers. Marty's suspicions were confirmed, and so was their complicity in hiding the affair. Marty was furious. One of the co-workers was even married to a good friend of his, and they had toddlers the same age. I asked Marty if that was enough, but he begged me to find out who this guy really was. I texted Mark I was coming in. As I entered, I pretended to be surprised, then called out, "Evelyn." "Hi. What are you doing here?" She was visibly shocked. Everyone at her table tensed up. She quickly introduced me as her sister's fiancé. I thanked them, then extended my hand to the blonde guy, introducing myself with my full name, hoping he'd respond in kind. He did. And I was taken aback. His name wasn't Jake. I learned his real name. I excused myself, waved to Mark, and joined him. We whipped out our phones. It didn't take long to find him. Social media profiles, even a couple of court judgments. And there it was, Jake was his middle name. At that point, I was just grateful Evelyn wasn't cheating with 2 different co-workers. Turns out, Jake was 26, married, with a 1-year-old daughter. It just kept getting better. I texted Marty the guy's name, then decided to push my luck. I told Marty to wait a few more minutes. I was playing babysitter, completely visible to Evelyn and her crew. I could see, out of the corner of my eye, that my presence was absolutely ruining their night. Good. After about 10 minutes, I told Marty to text Evelyn that he was spending the night at his parents' with their daughter. Soon after, I saw Evelyn take out her phone, show it to Jake, and the whole group packed up. Evelyn came over, wished me good night, and even had the audacity to ask if Sarah and I wanted to come over for dinner that weekend. I smiled and said, "Sounds like a great idea." Mark and I waited for them to leave, paid, and hurried back to Marty. We followed Evelyn, staying far behind. She made a beeline for home. It wasn't long before another car pulled into Marty's driveway, and Jake got out, knocked, and was greeted by Evelyn. They went inside together. It was about 7:30 p.m. I'd done all I could for Marty. I felt terrible for him, but I couldn't get any more involved. Being his wingman for confronting his cheating wife was a bit much, considering my own situation. Marty said it was fine, he'd handle the rest. He retrieved my gear from Evelyn's car, and we said goodbye. Almost 2 hours later, I got a text from Marty, "It's done. Going to my parents for real this time." My phone wasn't blowing up, so I didn't know what had happened with Evelyn. I'd been at Mark's since. My part in Marty's story was over. My biggest priority now was to go home and tell Sarah the wedding was off. She was going to take it badly, I knew. But I couldn't marry her. What the future held for us, if anything, I didn't know, but definitely no wedding anytime soon. To those who kept asking why I didn't confront her first, are you serious? She stone-cold lied right in front of me to her brother-in-law, someone she'd known for 10 years and supposedly thought was a great husband and father. Maybe you are naive enough to think someone can lie that coldly and then tell you the truth, but I'm not wired that way. Until that moment, I never had cause to second-guess Sarah. But she was untrustworthy right in front of my face. I'm actually impressed I kept my head and followed my instincts, because it led me to the truth. She could have so easily lied, deleted those texts, and I never would have known the horrible things she said, or how duplicitous she could be. My entire view of her shifted in an instant. It was disorienting, frankly panic-inducing. I was finally heading home to talk to Sarah. I'd update later, though I didn't expect a good one. Well, there's a lot to go over. Most of it, if I'm honest, has been downright shitty. I left Mark's house pretty late. Sarah knew I was out discussing business with him, but had no idea that business was her sister's affair. I was trying to work up the nerve to face her. After a few pep talks from Mark, I finally texted Sarah I was coming home. When I walked in, Evelyn was crying on the couch, with Sarah comforting her. I hadn't seen Evelyn's car, so this was the last thing I expected. I froze, almost turned around. Evelyn's presence would make a bad situation a million times worse. But the clock was ticking, friends to notify, wedding plans to cancel. As I entered, both looked up, but no tirade of accusations came. I just stared back, raising my eyes. Evelyn went back to crying, Sarah to comforting. I let the awkward silence hang. Marty hadn't mentioned my assistance. So I played dumb. I took a seat, fiddled with my phone, and asked, "What's going on?" Evelyn just cried. Sarah looked at me and said, "Marty is divorcing Evie." Yeah, I figured. What for? I pushed. Sarah stopped patting Evelyn's back, her face twisting like a child told to eat broccoli. Evelyn shot her a look, a clear warning. A pregnant pause. Then Sarah finally admitted, she cheated on him. That floored me. Absolutely not what I expected. Sure, the cat was out of the bag, but she could have feigned ignorance, or worded it differently. But she basically confirmed it to my face. Evelyn crumpled a bit, a strange sigh-sob escaping her. I wanted to press on, go for the gold, but I stammered a bit. Sarah probably interpreted my shock differently than it was. Did you know? I asked. Sarah just nodded, her hand still rubbing her sister's shoulder. I didn't hesitate for the follow-up, how long? The answer came back easier than I thought it would: 6 months. I was shocked by how easily she admitted it. Evelyn was shocked too, smacking Sarah's hand off her. Even Sarah looked surprised she'd said it out loud. I leaned back in the recliner, taking a breath. Time to tug the rest of that band-aid clean off. We're not getting married. 2 stunned goats. A chorus of "Huh? What?" from both sisters. I stood up and repeated myself. We're not getting married. I can't marry someone who would cover up adultery, especially not for 6 months. Sarah sprang off the couch, her body language screaming, "You can't be serious." But I put my hands up. I'm serious. I don't like this, not one bit. I don't like that you took part in this, and I can't get married to you with how I feel. It would be a mistake. The waterworks started immediately. Evelyn even did that gasping perchmouth thing. Wails from Sarah, accusations of not loving her, appeals to my duty, the lost money, the embarrassment. It was nothing I hadn't already thought about, but hearing it from Sarah, through body-racking sobs, was different. This is where I probably made a big mistake. Look, I said, trying to show finality, I already cancelled the honeymoon. It's not happening. It was a bomb, and the explosion was immediate. Evelyn, always quick on the uptake, pieced it together with my appearance at the bar earlier. "You son of a bitch," she screamed, flying across the room at me. I'm not a huge guy, but the force of her attack sent me staggering. I barely got my hands up before she started raking my face with her fingernails. I almost dropped my phone, but managed to push her away. "Evelyn, get off me. Sarah, get your sister under control." Evelyn lunged again, but surprisingly, Sarah wrapped her arms around her sister's waist and held her. I looked at Evelyn and yelled, "Get out of here right now, or I am calling the police," holding up my phone for emphasis. Sarah pleaded, "OP, she doesn't have anywhere to go right now. Marty took her car keys." That explained the lack of a car in the driveway, but I didn't care. I was 100% done with Evelyn. I marched into my home office, locked the door, and dialed the police. I told them I'd been attacked by my fiance's sister, was bleeding from my face, she'd scratched me good near my left eye, my vision was blurry, and I feared for my life. I even told them I'd recorded the whole thing. Just as I was finishing, Sarah was knocking on the door. "OP, please come out. We need to talk. Please, I love you, don't do this. And Evelyn is sorry, she wants to apologize." I'm pretty sure that last bit was a lie, but Sarah was clearly losing it. I didn't answer. Her cajoling attempts ended when the police arrived. I heard Sarah talking to them, then I came out. 2 male cops. One younger, one older and more annoyed. I introduced myself, pointed at Evelyn, stated she attacked me, and offered to show them the recording. The younger one asked if I wanted to press charges. "Yes," I said. He asked again. "Yes, again." At this point, I was getting heated. "Yes, damn it, I want to press charges. I have video evidence, and this is going to court, or else I'm calling up your boss and asking him to come down and do it himself." They seemed surprised I knew his name. My line of work means I interface with local law enforcement often. I understood what they were implying, but I didn't agree. Facts were facts. Evelyn assaulted me in my own home, and I wanted her gone. Thankfully, the situation didn't escalate further. They handcuffed Evelyn and put her in the patrol car. She was squealing and crying like some gibbering maniac. Sarah wasn't much better, just repeating, "No, please, no." The younger cop circled back, asking if everything was okay here. I just told them I was going to bed. He pressed Sarah, who eventually just nodded. He wasn't satisfied, starting to ask again, until I cut in, "If you want to go on a fishing expedition, you might want to do it over there on the lawn where my doorbell camera isn't recording you." I think I pushed my luck with him one too many times, but what could I do? I was probably 30 seconds from getting cuffed myself until his partner pulled him away. The older cop probably didn't want to process 2 arrests at the start of his shift. They left, taking Evelyn with them, hopefully out of my life forever. I slept in the guest room. Sarah made futile efforts to engage, but I just said we'd talk tomorrow. I crashed harder than I had in years. The next day was the weirdest effing day of my life. I woke up at 11 a.m. Sarah was still home, and the house was spotless. The floors sparkled, the toilet shined, I could practically lick the linoleum. When she saw me, she hovered, unsure. I took a deep breath and told her we needed to finish talking. She tried to sit next to me. I didn't want to be cruel, but I was clear, the wedding was off. She was a wreck, hyperventilating. I was holding it together better, but this was my idea, and I'd had more time to process. Finally, she asked the serious question, "What? About us?" I know some people will hate me for this, but I didn't have an answer. I just didn't know. I told her I'd read those text messages, and they showed me a side of her I didn't know existed. I couldn't understand why she'd go along with Evelyn, putting down Marty, egging her on, cheating on him and their daughter. She just kept saying, I know, it was wrong. I asked for an explanation, but she couldn't give one. She just said she got carried away, and she had to choose her sister. I told her I thought a good sister keeps you on the straight and narrow, doesn't give you a free pass to be a douchebag. She agreed, said she'd do better, but Evelyn had always been the boss, and she the follower. I get it, I have an older sibling too, but mine's a decent guy. Evelyn, clearly, was trash. And then came the second major, effing shock of my life in 48 hours. Sarah says, it's not fair. What's not fair? I asked. You were sexting that bimbo wife Mandy girl on Instagram last year. I got over it. I was so hurt, but I got over it. Why can't you get over this? Huh? What? Who the hell is bimbo wife Mandy? I had no effing clue. I asked if she was high, or having a psychotic break. I was protesting loudly. Sarah was yelling through her tears, telling me she saw the messages last year, but decided not to confront me because I'd stopped. Evidently, she'd been checking my socials from my home computer when I was at work, which should have been incredibly boring. I tried to make my case, offered to let her log into all my accounts, but she just kept calling me a liar and a pervert. She started throwing stuff. I told her if she threw one more thing, I'd have her taken out of the house like her sister. She swore at me and stomped off to the master bedroom, slamming the door. I was so utterly confused. I fired up my desktop and typed bimbo wife Mandy into Google. Sure enough, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, OnlyFans. I clicked an Instagram link. Up came a post of an extremely busty woman, clearly pushing the limits of science and technology. And where was she from? Australia. Everyone remember what I said about my brother? Guess who was staying with us last Christmas, all the way from Australia? Guess who I told, sure, go ahead and use my office computer to play games if you have jet lag. As far as I could tell, my brother, after his wife and kids went to sleep, had logged into something and was probably paying money to sext with this girl. What a great effing guy. I wanted to call him, confirm my suspicions, and give him an earful, but it was 2 or 3 a.m. there. It had to wait. I was crawling the walls, feeling completely let down by everyone. For a brief moment, I tried to connect what Sarah saw my brother do to what she did with Evelyn, but it just didn't come together. Maybe she was more tolerant or forgiving than I was, which is why she didn't confront me. I wish she had. It would have shown her my stance on these things, how I would act. Maybe it would have influenced her. Or maybe not. All I knew was this was becoming a novel, and I'd blown off most of the morning. My immediate family relationships were incredibly strained. My parents, initially supportive, were less so now that the financial loss was setting in. Sarah's parents were pissed. Evelyn, out of jail, had been bailed out by Sarah, which made me furious. I laid into Sarah, calling her her sister's underling. That struck a chord. She wrote me a 20-page letter about how Evelyn had always bossed her around. I read it twice. I wished we had talked about this any time in the last 6 years. Maybe things would be different. This update took longer than intended. Marty is still divorcing Evelyn. I'm not getting involved in his legal issues or tracking down Jake. And no, this isn't guerrilla marketing for an OnlyFans girl. Mandy, the bimbo wife, actually reached out to me, and she's quite nice, but she's happily married. No romance plans there. I spent days calling every person from my side invited to the wedding, giving them lengthy explanations. I wanted people to know I wasn't frivolous or just getting cold feet. It was out of respect. It meant calls lasted late into the evening. One night, I noticed Sarah wasn't home. I found out later she'd gone to Evelyn's arraignment, posted bail, and then driven her to her parents' house. I finally got my brother Carl on video call. We'd always been close despite our age difference. He was like a quasi-parental figure, mature and wise. The idea he'd been sexting another woman in my house was hard to stomach. I dove right in. "Carl, have you been using my computer to sex chat women when you were visiting?" He froze, then leaned out of frame, closing his office door. "Yeah, I did." "Why?" he admitted. I explained Sarah thought it was me, and I wasn't happy taking the hit for him. I asked if Karen, his wife, knew. He waffled, then, sheepishly, said no, and preferred to keep it that way. He poured it all out. Their relationship had been rough since their youngest was born, especially in the bedroom. He was tired of rejection, Karen was always tired. It led to him spending time working at night, which spiraled into a hardcore OnlyFans addiction. He swore he'd stopped, and he seemed sincere, but a nagging feeling remained. Was it just all the recent deceit making me doubt my own brother? The problem was complex. If I cleared my name, Sarah might spitefully inform Karen, potentially nuking Carl's marriage. I personally thought Karen should know, but I didn't feel comfortable being the one to drop that bomb. I urged him to tell his wife and get into marriage counseling. He revealed they had been going for 6 months, and what truly helped was a prescription for generic Viagra. I nearly did a spit take. He explained they were making sure to have intimate time, and the Viagra cured his performance anxiety, so now they were both looking forward to it. The gist: things are finally getting better, please don't screw this up. I really didn't want to be in this position, not just for Carl and Karen, but for my nieces. If what he said was true, I could be tossing a firebomb into a mending relationship. So, I decided to wait. I was meeting him in a couple of weeks anyway. I'd get him alone, a few drinks in him, and get to the bottom of it. It seemed the best course of action. That night, I went to bed early. I didn't see Sarah until the next morning. She looked haggard. She'd spent the night at her parents' after bailing Evelyn out. She made a point of telling me how horrible it was to explain to her parents that I had called off the wedding. "Do they know why?" I asked. "Of course they do," she barked. "Are you going to move back there, so they have both girls at home now?" It was childish and petty, but bailing Evelyn out annoyed me to no end. "She told me not to be an ass." I shot back, "And you don't need to be Evelyn's underling." She flinched. Tears welled. I cooled my temper. We just stood there, miles apart. "Our parents are going to be here at 3, she said. I facepalmed. My ego wanted to go off on her for not consulting me, but I did need to meet them, work out the wedding details, and explain face to face. So, fine. 3 p.m. came. Our parents. We sat at the big kitchen table Sarah loved. The next 3 hours were grueling. No one was happy. My parents, God bless them, gave me the "it's his decision to make" support, which meant, "Yeah, we think this is crazy too, but we're still backing him." That was fine. We worked out a deal: get back whatever money we could, split it as contributed, and eat the losses communally. But then, the house. Sarah vehemently objected to my idea of paying her back for her deposit. She didn't intend to move. Sarah and I hadn't really discussed the living situation in detail. The fact I even brought up house equity seemed to shock her, the implication being I expected her to move out. She threw a fit, and I don't blame her. I should have settled our relationship status first. It clearly tipped my hand about how I felt. Our parents probably expected it, but Sarah was beside herself. She absolutely was not accepting of us breaking up. "I am not moving out of my house, and we are not breaking up," she declared. That's how Sunday night ended. After our parents left, we tried to talk more, but just ran in circles. I was tired, just wanted to turn off my brain. Believe it or not, we just ended up watching a movie together in silence until it was time for bed. We left it with a "we'll talk about it more tomorrow" and retreated to our separate rooms. Monday, I woke up to a large, handwritten letter slid under my door from Sarah. I took a brief look, decided to deal with it later, and went to work. Sarah was still in bed. At the office, I scheduled meetings and started calling venues and vendors. It was a mixed bag. The catering people were adamant I pay most of their fees. I tried to explain, but my appeal fell on deaf ears. The DJ, conversely, was incredibly kind and gave us back almost all the money. During the day, I read Sarah's 20-page letter. The gist: ever since childhood, Evelyn bullied her, and Sarah's way of dealing with it was to go along with whatever Evelyn wanted. It became her general way of operating, afraid to rock the boat, to cause a problem, even to voice an opinion. I reflected on this. With a critical eye, Sarah had been a bit too perfect of a girlfriend. Never disagreed, never picked her plans over mine, never advocated against anything I wanted. She acted like a yes woman. We'd never had a minor disagreement, let alone a full-blown argument, until now. It sounds great, until it's not. I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah had this deep-seated insecurity, this need to make people happy, what they call people-pleasing behavior. When I started looking at it this way, a lot of things made sense. I realized that despite 6 years, I didn't truly know her. It was like she'd put up an image, a mirror, reflecting whatever she thought people wanted to see. In our relationship, she'd been acting the role of the perfect girlfriend, never really letting me inside to see who she was. I couldn't even say what I saw in those text messages was the real Sarah, because it was probably just another reflection, this time of Evelyn and all her faults. It's like we were in this unequal relationship. Maybe she loved me for who I am, for wearing my thoughts on my face. But maybe I only loved her for the mirror she was holding up to mine. I don't know if this sounds too metaphysical, but I'm right there with you. It's like this wisp of an idea I'm still trying to grasp. All I know is, in the last few days, I've probably learned more about Sarah than I had in the last 6 years. Her letter was the first real glimpse into her childhood. That night, we talked more about it, her childhood, her behavior. The conclusion we came to: she needs help. She's a grown woman, sadly stuck acting like a child, too scared to displease anyone, lest she face her sister's wrath, her parents' disapproval, or the loss of love from the one she loves. This is no way to have a relationship. And I can say, with much more confidence and assurance, that my decision to call off the wedding was the correct one. In fact, it could not be any more correct. That night, after our talk, I went to bed with much less angst than I had in days. This story probably ends here. I still have so much to navigate, but at least I finally see the truth. So tell me, after hearing all this, what do you think? Have you ever had your entire perception of someone you love shift so dramatically in an instant? I really want to know your thoughts.